What just happened in that Manhattan courtroom should terrify every American who still believes in justice. Sean Diddy Combs just walked on the most serious charges, and the prosecutor who let it happen has a very familiar last name, Comey. Yes, James Comey's daughter, Maurene, just pulled off another elite acquittal, and the stench of cover-up is overwhelming. Diddy's own bodyguard has fled the country in fear for his life. The feds never got those blackmail tapes that they were after. And outside the courthouse, his supporters celebrated with baby oil in scenes so degenerate I can't even describe them on air. This is not justice, folks. This is the deep state protecting its own. Again, keep watching. We've got the details. And while the justice system protects elite predators, you can protect your children's minds with the Tuttle twins. Remember, freedom is never more than one generation from extinction, and that's why the Tuttle twins created the most effective liberty-first content for kids. Their monthly magazine teaches children about economics, liberty, and personal responsibility through engaging comics, activities, and real-world lessons. Your kids will learn how free markets work, why the Constitution matters, and how to think critically. The exact opposite of government school indoctrination. Subscribe a loved one as a gift for an entire year for just $56 at TuttleTwins.com/next. Do not let them brainwash your children. Teach them to think for themselves. So the memes are coming in fast and furious. Here's one of the first to hit the interwebs. Yeah. Yeah, O.J. Simpson meme. Remember the black gloves? O.J. Simpson? Diddy with his baby oil. Okay, well, what's who we have here? Lex Guardia. This is freaking Spanish. I can't speak this. What is this? Seriously? Okay. Sean Diddy Combs, former bodyguard, big homie, has fled the United States, saying he fears for his life if Diddy is free. He says that based on what he has already said publicly, he's certain Diddy will come after him. I know if he leaves, I'll be the number one target. And here he is on Piers Morgan.
Old lifestyle.
If he does walk, though, would you already fear about reprisals against you just for speaking out? Would you be genuinely concerned about him coming after you? Is that one of the reasons you've left the country?
Well, here's the thing, only thing I fear is God and my mom. And I made a promise to my mom that, I'm not gonna revert to an old lifestyle. And I know if he walks, I'm gonna be target number one, which is fine. I'm used to that. It's kind of exciting for me.
Is that exciting or is that slightly scary?
Oh, no, it's definitely exciting, Piers.
Really?
Yeah.
So explain that, because in my world, I wouldn't find that exciting.
Well, we come from different professions.
Yes.
In my profession, it's what we live for.
Well, being someone's number one target.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Who would want that? Oh, here's some more memes. Diddy's courtroom picture. Yeah. Okay, Maurene Comey, C3 writes, Maurene Comey fixed another one. Deep state blackmail operation, saved just like Epstein. Diddy walks on appeal, just wait. Okay, so here is the verdict. Not guilty, count 1, racketeering, conspiracy. Not guilty, count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Count 3, guilty, transportation to engage in prostitution. Count 4, not guilty, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Count 5, guilty, transportation to engage in prostitution. So those are the charges as they stand. Guilty on counts 3 and 4. Transportation to engage in prostitution. And here is Maurene Comey, James Comey's daughter, the prosecutor in the Diddy case, also in the Ghislaine Maxwell case and the Epstein case. Sassafras84 says, doesn't surprise me he was acquitted of the more serious charges. What's Alex have to say?
One of the top stories. Now, the P. Diddy verdict came in, as you know, in the last few hours. And in and of itself, it's very tawdry, and a lot of people followed it like it was a soap opera. And so it's obviously been one of the top stories. for months and months and months. And he was found not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on sex trafficking by force, fraud and coercion, guilty on transportation to engage in prostitution, not guilty for sex trafficking by force, fraud and coercion. That was count 4. Count 5, guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. So basically, being a pimp. Now, what he did and what he's been convicted of is completely legal in places like Las Vegas. So, what really happened here? Well, the mere fact that James Comey's daughter was given the case out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, so thousands of federal prosecutors, and that she's given all of the Epstein-related stuff, Ghislaine Maxwell, a whole bunch of other ones, it all gets handed to her because Daddy is on record as the controller of the, not just Epstein files and videos, but all the other big sex trafficking, pedophilia operations, just like J. Edgar Hoover used that for control. And Diddy was heavily involved with people that were above Epstein. And so clearly she went in just like she did in all these other cases. I mean, dozens. And she minimizes it and contains it.
And that's how the elite continue their operations. Sean Diddy Combs, here we have Brianna Morello. Says Sean Diddy Combs' criminal trial was all about federal government obtaining the freak-off sex tapes the rapper had secretly recorded. Here's what the media won't tell you.
Argue that they did it better. Sean Diddy Combs' criminal trial had very little to do with sex trafficking and racketeering, and everything to do with our federal government getting its grimy little hands on those freak-off sex tapes. All you had to do was pay attention to the last 2 months in criminal court, and you'd quickly realize that federal prosecutors were doing a horrific job at proving their main argument. Actually, I'd also argue that they did a better job at proving that Cassie, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, was the one who was orchestrating the sex trafficking, because in court, she admitted to paying these sex workers, and she also admitted to being the one to orchestrate a lot of it. Even in text messages, she was sitting there and typing, because she didn't deny that this was her, saying that she'd rather have a female sex worker than a male sex worker in one of these sex parties. Folks, the reality of it here is RICO is a very tough charge to make stick. In fact, most criminal attorneys can't really even detail it and what it means to a jury. That's just the reality behind all of this. And unfortunately, our federal government did a horrible job at proving RICO, because you're trying to say that Diddy was the one running a criminal enterprise, and yet you only have one person charged. Folks, how do you run a criminal enterprise with only one person? It doesn't seem to make much in the way of sense, unless you're just trying your very best to throw anything at the wall and hope something sticks. And that's very likely what happened here. But the reality of it is you have the federal government arguing that Diddy was sex trafficking victims. But who were those victims? Well, it's important to note that there's a consistency here with not only Diddy's criminal case, but Ghislaine Maxwell. That consistency is James Comey's daughter. She was the lead prosecutor in both of those cases, and she also argued sex trafficking in both of those cases, but didn't tell you who those sex trafficking victims were being trafficked to. Now, we know that Diddy did film a lot of these freak-offs. We don't know how many, but we know that there's video footage, and a lot of these victims said that it was used against them as blackmail. But the reality of it is we never knew who was in those sex parties. Why? That's strange. We didn't hear about it either when we were talking about Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal trial. Our federal government does an incredible job at covering for those who are participants in sex trafficking, but they won't out them. Now, why is that? Well, now our federal government has these freak-off tapes. They showed the most innocent screenshots to the jury. They didn't play the video in criminal court, of course. But the reality of it is this. Prosecutors intentionally failed. That is my true belief. I don't believe that they actually really had a case here to bring up in regards to RICO and sex trafficking. They did their very best to intentionally just make it look like they were arguing that. But the reality of it is they did a better job at arguing that Diddy's ex-girlfriend, who is a domestic violence victim, was the one orchestrating most of these sex parties. So what's going to happen here? Well, we don't really know, right? We just know that he's been now found guilty on 2 out of the 5 charges he was facing. Now, the most severe charges he was found not guilty on, and he's facing on those 2 charges, he's facing a max of 10 years in prison for each count. Wow. But the reality of it is this is his first criminal conviction, and so it might be just a slap on the wrist for him.
Folks, a slap on the wrist for Diddy. What is this? Oh my goodness. Diddy supporters showering each other with baby oil outside of the courthouse to celebrate the verdict. Yeah, they're having a freak off right outside the courthouse. Diddy supporters turned the courthouse steps into a full-blown spectacle, rubbing hard after the verdict was announced. Energy was wild, raw, and completely unapologetic. Here's some footage. This looks like some footage we can't even play here. But you get the point. Was justice served? You tell me. My final thought is next. So the Diddy verdict matters because it proves the 2-tier justice system is alive and thriving. When James Comey's daughter is the prosecutor in both the Epstein and Diddy cases, and both times the most serious charges mysteriously disappear, that's not coincidence, that's coordination. So think about what we just witnessed. A bodyguard fleeing the country in terror, sex trafficking charges vanishing, blackmail tapes the feds desperately wanted staying hidden, and a celebration so vile that baby oil and degeneracy turned courthouse steps into a freak show. This is how the deep state operates, to protect their own while destroying anyone who threatens their power. The same people who weaponize justice against Trump let predators walk free. Why? Because those predators have the goods on the elite. So here's my question. Do you believe Maurene Comey is running a cover-up operation? Yes or no? If you want to support our operation, hit our merch shop and show the world where you stand. Grab an alligator Alcatraz shirt or an Otto Pen shirt and trigger a liberal today by visiting shop.nextnewsnetwork.com, linked down below.